Bitcoin's going up. Things are going up, and we are probably going to have a pretty good summer, in my opinion, if Bitcoin continues to follow the M2 global money supply. We're seeing a good bounce in stocks, but I want to talk about Solana. Solana did so well in 2023. It did so well in 2024. I think something might be happening in 2025, and the big question is can Solana get back above $200, and what is standing in its way? I know a lot of people have been bullish on Solana for a very long time, but I'm seeing some things in the charts that I don't really like. And while if you would have bought in like 2023 and you sold, late 2024, you could have made like 100x. I think that might be on pause, and we might need to reevaluate how we view Solana. Now, there's two things I want to talk about in this video. One, what is the worst case scenario, and is Solana heading for that? Two, how does Solana get bullish again? And if it crosses what level, can it start to rapidly rise in price? So those two things I want to talk about. Let's just jump right into it. Here, you are going to see Solana on the weekly chart. And you can see down here, this is really this amazing move that happened in 2023. You had this bottom section, you had this neckline. Solana tightened up here with price action. You can see we had a low, another low, higher lows, breaking above the support. And from here, if you would have just simply bought as it took out all of these highs right here and bought somewhere right around here, you could have walked away with about a 700% profit from about $30 to $200. It's really incredible, and you would have made a ton of money. But that's a little bit different here today. On this chart, you can see we have two lines. We have in yellow a 30-week moving average, and in blue a 40-week moving average. Now, these are very long-term moving averages, and so when you cross it, it really signifies a shift in trend. Let me take you back in time here. Solana's first run up in 2021, you can see how vertical prices above those moving averages and how vertical those moving averages are. Solana comes up, touches back on the 30-week moving average, never breaks it, and then continues higher up in 2021. The 2021 bull run was over when Solana crossed below that blue 40-week moving average. It then came back up and retested and failed, leading into its first bear market in 2022. Now, this all changed in 2023 when Solana crossed back above that 30 and 40 week, and then the 30-week moving average got above the 40-week moving average. You can see what happened then. Look at this meteoric rise until late 2024, early 2025, when what happened? Solana broke below the 30 and 40-week moving average again, and it looks like today, in my opinion, Solana is trying to retest the 30 and 40, and the big question is this retest going to be like the 2021 retest or the 2022 retest where it touched and then went bear market mode for a year? Or are we going to get a retest and a breakthrough leading to new all-time highs? I have to be honest, and I have to say that this price action does have me concerned. Very rarely does a move like this happen where you're closing this many percentages below, this many weeks below these 30 and 40-week moving averages, where you do not have a significant decline. I personally think that what's going to happen is Solana is going to come up here, touch these moving averages around $170, and then start to make its bear market low down. It's going to start entering a stage 4 decline, and it's going to retrace. I'm not sure how far. Maybe it could come all the way down here to like 58 or 47, somewhere in that range. Maybe come back to these highs right here, this high, and kind of make a section over here around $50 for Solana, where it really started to chop a little bit. But to me, this price action is bearish, and it's not advisable, in my opinion, to buy Solana at this time until you can confirm whether price is breaking above. As long as price is below the 30 and 40, it is not a good time to buy Solana. Now, I want to take you into the daily chart and kind of further talk about what is happening here, okay? On the daily chart, we can also look at the 30 and 40 day, but it's probably a little better to look at the 50, the 100, the 150 day, and the 200 day moving average. You can see kind of the same things here. When the 50 is above the 150, above the 200, and price is above that 50, we really start to get that bull run. And on the opposite, when price is below the 50 and the 50 is below the 150 and the 200, we really get that bear market. Well, what's happening today in Solana? We can see how the 50 it chopped around. This is kind of your stage 3 distribution between people who are kind of getting in at the last second, kind of FOMOing in, and people who are early, people trying to sell out of some profits. That's where we get this chop in moving averages. Now, right now, this 50-day moving average is coming back up to retest the 150 and the 200. This is going to be a big decision maker here, what happens. And it looks like we could be getting, a little cup and handle pattern on the short term here in Solana, something like this right here. This is a little cup and handle. Maybe it's going to build on a little candle, come kind of into this range with the 50-day before blasting up a little bit to retest the 200 and the 150 around $170, $180. This is going to be a very, very important range for Solana holders to look and see what happens in order to understand what price action is going to do. If price touches the moving averages and comes back down and gets rejected, we could be in for a further decline, especially if price breaks below the 50-day moving average like this. Imagine this 50-day moving average is coming up like this. These moving averages are coming across like this, and price kind of does this little chop along, pops up, and it kind of runs into this next resistance level right here on the short term, right around, $178. You can see we have this point here, these kind of points of resistance right here, and then support. It was support, and then it became resistance. And so the big question is, when and if Solana, which I assume is going to break to the upside here, go from about 140 to 170, at that point, how does it act against the moving averages, which are running right in here as beautiful levels of resistance? Is Solana going to take that resistance and come back down, meet this 50-day, and then break lower? Or is it going to be able to get some movement up, find this area, get some support from that 50-day, and break higher? Now, let me show you the bullish scenario. That's kind of our bearish scenario on Solana. I personally, if I was choosing a view to have, is I would have the bearish scenario while price is below the 30 and 40-week moving average. This is a weekly chart again. As price is below these 30 and 40-week moving averages, I am bearish. I have to be bearish. It's part of my rules. It's what I believe is the best thing to do. And so as price is below this level, below these moving averages, I have to be bearish on the long term for Solana, and I have to assume it's going to go down to about $50 or something like that. Now, the bullish scenario is something along this lines. The bullish uptrend can continue for Solana if Solana breaks out above these moving averages and turns them from resistance to support. So that would look like something like this. You can kind of see how when it flipped over here, it was chopping along the horizontal, right? And so what typically happens is you have these bands of horizontal movement. And this is seen more familiar in stocks where some really leading stocks don't really get a huge bear market. They might correct 10 or 20% in a bear market, which you can see Solana's already corrected about 42%. And so if the bull market were to continue and Solana were going to go out and put in a new all-time high and get back above $200 again and try and make its way up to around $300, what you would want to see for that scenario to happen is for Solana to break above these moving averages. Then it will probably come back and sit on the moving average, and then it will start to make its way higher to the all-time high, somewhere around that $250 to $280 range. I know it's been all the way up here to around 290 something, but the big resistance level, in my opinion, is kind of right around 250. You can see this when we zoom out here. You can see, because in 2021, it really only got up to about $250. At the high, it was like 260-ish, but the actual weekly close was around 250. And then you can see in our current bull run that we've been in 2024 and 2025, these weekly closes were around $250 as well. And so the bullish scenario is weekly price gets above the 30 and 40 week moving average somehow, whether it's Bitcoin going up to around 150 and that brings everything up with it, whether there's a change in tariffs, whether there's an economic policy change, something like that. But you can imagine if Solana came up here, broke above the moving averages, tested it, and then came up, the next logical thing, if it holds these moving averages as a support line, is the next logical thing it would want to do is come up here and test this $250 area. If that were to happen, you get two scenarios at that point. You have scenario one, where Solana builds a VCP pattern, which is this pattern right here. It is where you have a tightening and a contraction of the lows against a neckline to where price gets squeezed into this area right here, and then it has so much pressure that it breaks out, okay? What you could have happen is you could build another VCP if Solana gets very, very tight against this $250 level. So it could come up like here, and then it could go like this, and what you can do is you could have a one level of VCP, two level of VCP, and then a third level of VCP up here, and price could contract against this $250 level. At that point, if volume really dries up and squeezes price action, you could have a breakout. And if you see Solana start getting to $260, $270 somewhere up here, it's reasonable to expect it's going to go make a new all-time high. And if Solana did go make a new all-time high at that point, you could have a lot of expectations to be very bullish on the asset as a whole. Now, if that doesn't happen, if price squeezes up against the 250 and breaks back down to around the $200 level with these moving averages and then breaks below, you would then get very, very, very bearish on the Solana price again. All of this in context, you also have to apply to how bullish is Solana against a lot of other cryptos. And so when I see Solana struggling below the 30 and 40 week moving average, it does raise some flags, because it doesn't mean that it's a bad asset to make money in, right? All cryptos are a good buy at a certain point, right? But Solana already had this beautiful run in 2023 and 2024. A lot of other cryptos did not. And so there's two ways you can look at that. Either Solana is a leading crypto that is expected to continue to rise higher and faster. I think that scenario is hard to believe, because the market cap is continuing to grow as inflation continues on the chain. So inflation is growing at a much faster pace, or market cap is growing at a much faster pace than price. And so if that's going to continue, much like the dollar, it's going to be harder for Solana's price to continue to linearly increase year over year, because the market cap is going to get so massive. And so we're seeing Solana against Bitcoin, Solana against other things, do some things that could cause some concerns. Let me show you Solana Bitcoin. We've just looked at Solana USD. How does Solana Bitcoin stacking up against this? And so when I actually look at Solana Bitcoin, it kind of validates some of the things that we're talking about here with Solana USD, and how it could have a quicker bear market than a lot of other assets. And so you can see here, when Solana was doing really well in 2023 and 2024, it was outpacing Bitcoin. But Solana Bitcoin has run across this trend line here, this downward sloping trend line, and it's actually also below the 30 and the 40-week moving average, meaning that it's probably going to come back down. So even if Bitcoin were to rise a ton, Solana looks like it's in a stage that it's falling. It's falling against Bitcoin. So even if Bitcoin were to continue, we could expect that Solana is not going to keep up pace with Bitcoin. Solana is probably going to come back up here and retest this moving average with Bitcoin, but then fail down further. And then Solana USD will fail at the same time, because it's failing to keep up with Bitcoin. This is also corroborated by our final chart here. Solana is actually failing to keep up with Cardano as well. And it doesn't mean that Solana or Cardano are better than one another. It just simply means that Solana already ran. It already had its price movement. You can see in 2023, Solana outpaced Cardano in growth by tons. But now it looks like Solana is falling against Cardano, and it's below the 30 and it's below the 40-week moving average, and Cardano is actually the better hold. And so there's a lot of things to look at here with Solana, but the base case for me is that Solana is entering this stage right here, and we want to see that by seeing how it interacts with these moving averages. Now, I think that this is going to happen in the summer. I think over the next 2 or 3 months, you're going to see what Solana is going to do at these moving averages. My base case is that Solana is going to touch the moving averages and fall down further and enter its kind of bear market season. If it were to break above the moving averages and then set them as a new support line, then you can see Solana go back above $200. But that would be counter trend. That would be counter to what these moving averages are showing. And that would be a very big surprise for me. If that happens, if it does sit on the moving averages, make them a support and head back to 200, I think you could realistically expect Solana to get back up to $250 again before deciding what it's going to do at its all-time high. This is exactly what I think is going on with Solana. Very concise, very simple version of how to do technical analysis on this token. And I think if you can follow the 30 and 40-week moving average, you can make a lot of money on Solana and a lot of other tokens using this very simple market strategy. Now, if you're still watching the video, I'd appreciate a subscribe, a like, drop a comment if you agree with this sentiment or not, or if you want me to look at any token out there in the world, any altcoin, any ecosystem token, or anything. I also have the Crypto 100x blueprint in the description of this video. Go ahead and grab it if you want to learn more stuff like this, or more stuff on how to just be a better crypto investor.